We went to Termez, a border town on the Amudarya River in southern Uzbekistan. To the west were the snow-capped mountains making the border with Turkmenistan. To the east, just 100 kilometers away, was Dushanbe, capital of Tajikistan. And to the south, across the river, was Afghanistan. It was weird to look across the river and see this distant, dangerous land that we've always heard about in the news, and it was just a village with smoke coming out of people's chimneys. My friend in Fergana said that the people there eat a lot of meat, and that made sense riding the train there. There was just grassy fields and herders with hundreds of sheep and cows. We were really lucky to visit there when we did. The city was just opening into bloom. The almond trees and apricot trees, our guide told us, only bloom for a week, and we got to see them. Driving along, I spotted a group of men in a field, and I asked our drivers to stop. As we got closer, about 50 meters away, I could smell them, the smell of sweat and unwashed clothes. And as we penetrated the circle, we realized it was a wrestling match. At one end of the circle, cordoned off by string, was where the respected older men sat. And as we entered, I could hear our presence announced by the MC of the wrestling match. One of the things about traveling in Uzbekistan is that guests are always really welcomed. And so we got to take pictures with guests of honor. We've been invited to some sort of Navruz celebration here. I'm gonna go inside. Across the road from the wrestling match, the women and children were celebrating Navruz, wearing their traditional clothing. Navruz is the spring festival in Uzbekistan. It's held on the equinox, March 21st. The song they were singing was Kelin Salam, which is the song that they sing to welcome a new bride. And young girls were dressed in bridal costumes and bowing while holding their veil, which is the way a new bride will greet her new family. Sergey, our guide, was great. He was an old Russian Uzbek. On the trip out to the site, he pulled out this ancient Soviet atlas and showed us some magazine clippings he'd clipped out of a National Geographic magazine. You could tell he was a person who really valued materials and books. He was a man of the age before internet. Nowadays, we could just look at these maps online, but he had these cherished books that he showed us from, and I liked that. He was so excited when he'd talk and when he'd describe these sites, and he'd finish his speech and then bustle off to the next place. He'd point at shards of pottery and say, "These bricks saw Alexander the Great." And when he said the name of the conqueror, his face would tighten in reverence. He gave us an overview of the history of the era, starting with Iran, then the conquest of Alexander the Great, and finally the Buddhist Kushan Empire. And he explained how Buddhism came from India up north into Central Asia, and then went out east across the Silk Road to China, Korea, and eventually Japan. The town museum held Buddhist artifacts. When Buddhism first started as a religion, there were no depictions of the Buddha, and then it was allowed to depict the Buddha as a Bodhi tree. The first human depictions of the Buddha were made by Greco-Bactrian artists. They were the descendants of Alexander the Great, whose empires had adopted Buddhism. They sculpted the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the image of their Greek gods, Apollo, Zeus. Look at the flowing robes. Look how the nose is straight and pointy. And in contrast to the Southeast Asian Buddhas, look how the earlobes are short. We visited Muslim mausoleums and pilgrimage sites.
Bone brickwork. Then the same very style is used again in these elements above the corners. You see this sail like full with air. Can you see this element? And again, herringbone brickwork. So first quadrangle, then the next figure would be octagon, because if you want cupola less in diameter, and not so heavy. You put octagon and then on octagon cupola. So everywhere you are in the Arabic world, you can see this order of
Amin. Tanısali, hatırcanı olsun, tinçlik olsun, yurtumuz, dünyamız, Uzbekistanımız bilan Amerikamız doim bordi kelsi, ming yillik bo'lsa Alloh taolo muyassar etsin Parvardigor egam. Amin. Alloh akbar. Auzu billahi minash-shaytonir-rajim.
Termez was this crossroads of cultures. It was Zoroastrian, and then the Greeks came and they worshipped Greek gods, and then there was a Buddhist empire, and then the Muslims came, and then the Russians came and they brought Christianity, and it's all there. You can see it all. You can visit the archaeological sites, you can go to the museum and see the artifacts, and there's no other tourists there.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huvallahu ahad. Allah samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad.
It's isolated. It's in this little corner of southern Uzbekistan.
لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد